Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hau Huddle show where two cousins talk about the NFL. It's been a crazy last couple of weeks. We took a short break because of the holidays and some, family vacations and things like that. But now we're back, and we're here to discuss this wild first week of the NFL playoffs and get yourselves ready for the divisional rounds. My name is Andrew Howe, joined alongside Xavier Howe. Xavier, how are you doing today?
Amazing. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for the upcoming games that'll be happening this weekend, and also to talk about all the wild stuff that has been going on since we had our last episode. I guess normally we do our recaps of all the games, but because we've had so much stuff happen in the last few weeks since we recorded, just what have been some of your favorite moments over the last few weeks of football watching?
Watching wise over the last few weeks, I really enjoyed watching all the playoff games, all the wild card games. I mean, I think this was the best wild card weekend I've watched in my entire life by far. Every single game has been insane, and except the Texans game, only that one. But I mean, the games are just crazy and all came down to the wire. And there was a crazy amount of lead changes in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I think a little shout out before we start fully talking about the playoffs was the whole NFC South race at the very end of the season during Week 18, where the Bucks beat the Panthers in the last game of their season to tie them in the standings, but then it all came down to the Saints versus Falcons to see who would end up making the playoffs, and that was a crazy game because the two teams that were playing both didn't have any chance of making the playoffs, but whoever won that game determined who was going to make it, and the Falcons ended up winning at the very last minute, 19 to 17, and then the Panthers ended up making the playoffs. So I thought that was one of the crazier parts of the last week of the season. But yeah, the rest of the year or rest of the playoffs have been super entertaining so far. I mean, we could talk about some of the games off the bat. I know that your Eagles unfortunately had a bit of a tough showing, and we can discuss that in just a little bit. But let's start off with the NFC. The earlier games on Saturday with the Rams and the Panthers. This was a game that I thought many people were gonna think was gonna be very much Rams dominated, but the Panthers actually put up a pretty good fight and almost won.
Yeah, and the regular season game is actually like pretty similar to the one that happened in the finals. Bright and in the playoffs, excuse me. But Bryce Young, I think he shows that he's not really like that young anymore, and he can handle tough situations, and he'd have a good game in the playoffs. And I thought the Panthers D had a great game, and Mike Jackson with the pick, and slowing down Matthew Stafford just enough to keep them in the game. But the Rams are the Rams, and Stafford is just Stafford. So I mean, definitely bounced back on that last drive, and Panthers went three and out and couldn't get a yard.
Yeah, that last sequence for Carolina definitely was unfortunate because the rest of the game was very entertaining from them. They were able to come back from an early hole that they dug themselves into after the Rams offense got off to a really hot start. They were able to capitalize off of that turnover, as you mentioned, and almost came away with would have been one of the crazier upsets of the whole season. Bryce Young running it in for a touchdown, Chuba Hubbard having two touchdowns. Like it was a crazy game, but. The Rams' offense just proves to be a little bit too strong. Stafford and Puka just the best combo right now in the National Football League, and so pretty excited to see what they can do down the line. Let's talk about the Bears and the Packers though, because I feel like this might have been the best game of the whole week, even though there was a ton of really good games because it was a rematch of an earlier matchup a few weeks ago, and then the Bears end up coming back all the way from I think they were down what was it 11 points with just 5 minutes left, and they ended up winning the game.
Yeah, the Bears are definitely a comeback team, and we see it through the whole entire year, and they do again in the playoffs. Kind of crazy. And Caleb, you know, you always know you can come back even as a rookie, which is kind of insane. But shout out to the Packers for keeping a strong lead, but it doesn't matter if you have a strong lead against this team because they're a comeback team, and that's why they're dangerous.
Yeah, it's a bit of a disappointing ending to the season for the Packers. They were, I think, 9-3-1 at some point, and then they ended up the season 9-8-1. I think they lost 4 or 5 in a row to end the season, including that playoff loss. Obviously, they were hurt. Micah Parsons got injured halfway through the season, and that was a big part of what made this defense so good. But I think still overall, pretty disappointing for Green Bay to lose the way that they did in this game, specifically because you think about how the game ended and what Brandon McManus missing an extra point and a field goal and 2 field goals, I should say, at the end of the game. That's 7 points that could have been on the board for Green Bay, and instead they end up losing by 4 points. So that's a pretty unfortunate situation if you're the Packers.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, McManus, think about it that way, he definitely sold them the game because they would have won, but Packers definitely slowed down in the end, which led to the Bears having an insane comeback. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought this game was gonna be over like at halftime, but then the
yeah,
Bears.
I thought it was over.
I was ready to turn it off almost, but then they decided to come all the way back, and Caleb in the fourth quarter is just too clutch.
Wait, I need to do my Ben Johnson
Okay. The handshake? Yeah, that was a crazy handshake. He really doesn't like Matt LaFleur very much, so that was kind of funny. Um, I guess he has all the history of playing them when he was in Detroit, and so still not a big fan. It seems like he's gonna keep his job for now. But what a job Ben Johnson has done in terms of making
definitely
his
keeping
crowd
his
super
job.
happy. Yeah, I mean for LaFleur maybe a little bit questionable, but I think you're gonna feel pretty good with with Micah gonna be eventually coming back and being a big part of this team for the future. Let's talk about Buffalo because they will go into Jacksonville and take down a Jaguars team that won 8 straight games to end the regular season. Josh Allen clutching up at the very end of the game, working that incredible touchdown drive, including a big reception to Brandon Cooks to send them all the way down the field for the game-winning touchdown. And then Trevor Lawrence on the other end had a pretty good game, but ended up throwing 2 interceptions, including one that sealed the game at the very end. I mean, this was a really entertaining game and a big win, I think, for the Bills to just say that they continue to dominate in this round of the playoffs, at least.
Yeah, and you think about it one way, if they lost that game, Sean McDermott would have been fired. But I'm just gonna say it: Josh Allen, I think, is the best player in the playoffs, and I think will continue to be. And he's been the best player in the playoffs for like the last 3 years. And I'll just say that because he's just a game changer when it comes to these games. So.
Yeah, I mean, think about what he was able to do with James Cook only rushing for 46 yards. Terrell Shavers, one of the main wide receivers that has risen up for the Bills, getting injured really early on into this game, and Gabe Davis getting hurt as well. The receiving room is very, very, very thin for Buffalo going forward, and that's potentially going to be a problem. But the fact that Josh Allen, despite all of that, is still able to put up the numbers that he did is so impressive. He had 3 touchdowns for himself. And ends up getting Buffalo a big win on the road. I was always confident in the Bills, but the Jaguars have just been playing so good, so I really wasn't sure who was going to win this game. Parker Washington obviously had a pretty good game himself, but yeah, the Bills just ended up coming to play.
Yeah, and good thing they brought up the Bills receiving room because they have absolutely no one. It's just tough to see how Josh Allen can't get that much health. But if each player, like I said, Brandon Cooks has a good game, King Coleman has a good game, but it's just enough for Josh Allen to do his work and win games.
Yeah, so shout out to the Bills. They're going to be going over to Denver, and that's going to be a really interesting matchup as we get into our predictions later in the show. But Xavier, we unfortunately have to do it. We have to talk about your Philadelphia Eagles losing to the 49ers 23-19. I thought that they were going to actually win this game at the very end because the defenses were really holding strong. After Jake Elliott kicked that field goal to give them the lead, I thought that might have been it. But Brock Purdy leads a big drive down the field, ends with a CMC touchdown, and then the Eagles aren't able to get all the way down the field. It was so close, and you have to mention that there was a missed extra point at the very end, in the very beginning of this game. And if that went through, they might have been able to kick a field goal to tie the game, but instead they are forced to go for it. Just a tough situation overall. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about how the Eagles played this game and I guess overall the season as well.
Well, I mean, to be honest, this game kind of like represents part of their season because struggling offense, defense holds up, and they can't really capitalize in these really big situations, I guess. But I mean, good thing we fired Kevin Patula because I mean this offense didn't look as that great. I mean, even though Saquon had a good game, in the end they just couldn't do anything when they should have pulled away. I mean, good thing brought Jake Elliott at the point because I was, really, really mad because when he missed it and he just acted like it was no big deal. I'm like, you just sold us the game, and he actually did. So, one thing to think about. And
Yeah.
we came close, but Brock Purdy is just like such an underrated quarterback. And he did lead this 49ers team to a Super Bowl once, so watch out.
Yeah, Brock in the playoffs is suddenly going to be something that we have to start talking about a lot. I mean, that first drive to open the game was just so impressive from them, and then obviously able to continue putting up good showings up until the fourth quarter. Um, I'm curious though what you think about the offense. Obviously, the defense had a pretty good game. Quinyon Mitchell with two big interceptions in this game, but the offense obviously has been a big topic. But it felt like in this game specifically, there were moments where perhaps it was the players that were not performing as well as they could have. Specifically, you think about a player like AJ Brown. He had that big drop late in the game. Jalen Hurts just maybe not finding the right passes or going for the correct reads. What do you think about the difference between the OC being at fault or maybe the players being at fault?
You know, it depends what point you're talking about because if you're talking about the Eagles on the last drive where they only just went a yard back on 1st and 10 in the red zone, then I think that it's probably on the coaches. But if you're talking about AJ Brown not getting off the field, or maybe it's Jalen Hurts having a bad read. But I mean, I think the Kevin Batula was a good fire because I saw a clip of Jalen Hurts, when he was telling him to play on fourth and 10, and he didn't seem to like it, and the play was literally just four verticals. So, but I mean, the defense, I thought played well, so that'd be good. But I think a big factor in this game was coaching because Kyle Shanahan's creativity on that Jawan Jennings play where he threw a touchdown, and Robert Sala as a defensive coordinator, he's been great too. So I think that might have been a difference.
Yeah. So I know it's an unfortunate ending here for the Eagles, but they're gonna have a good option at offense coordinator. They still have so much talent in that room. I have a good feeling they're gonna be back for another great season next year. Let's talk about these last games really quick because New England had a really good game against the Chargers. Houston had a blowout win against the Steelers, especially in the second half. I think the defenses were the biggest moment or the biggest conversation starters for both of these teams. I guess which one of them, Houston or New England, are you potentially more scared of if you're another contending team like the Bills to make a run to the Super Bowl despite them not having really much of a track record in the postseason.
Honestly, I think the Texans are just too scary. They're just too scary. I mean, their defense is literally like best possible. Like they literally shut down Aaron Rodgers. He couldn't do anything and had two defensive touchdowns. Think about how good of a team you have to be if your defense is that good. And if CJ Stroud has a good game, I think this team just is just like insane.
Yeah, Houston, especially in that second half, just an incredible final, ending to that game. CJ Stroud, he played okay. I think the offense just kind of did what they have been doing all year, which is just be average. Curious to see how they look without Nico Collins, if he's going to potentially be out for these next games, because he I think is in the concussion protocol right now. But it's always a defense for them, and it once again was the defense against the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers just looked so deflated at the end of that game, like he couldn't do anything. It was a little bit sad to see, but excited for Houston and what they could potentially do. I think I'm gonna go with them as well, although I am interested in what New England has to offer, and that's gonna be a fun matchup once they eventually play on Sunday. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But before we go into our playoff previews, let's discuss this head coaching carousel a little bit because it has been a big topic, a lot of interviews kind of going back and forth. many of these coaches getting fired. Specifically, you go to the AFC North, you see Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, and Kevin Stefanski all lose their jobs right after the season ended. And there's a bunch more openings as well. Mike McDaniel leaving the Dolphins, for example. Raheem Morris leaving the Atlanta Falcons. So with all that being said, Xavier, I guess we already have John Harbaugh going to the Giants. So if you want to talk about that move, we could definitely do that for a little bit. But what's your general take about what jobs are potentially very interesting and what jobs maybe are not as interesting right now?
You know, I think a lot of these coaching jobs are very great potentially for coaches seeking for a new window. You got Eagles offensive coordinator, you got Pittsburgh head coach, Browns head coach, and I think the Harbaugh hire is probably one of the best things that's happened to this Giants organization in like whatever the last 10 years. Like not even like because like Harbaugh, he's known to provide stability. I think he could be great to this Giants organization. I think it's just what they needed. So I think that's a great hire by the Giants management team. I'm happy for them, but I'm not. But it's a big win for them.
Yeah, I mean they have some young pieces like Scadaboo, Malik Neighbors, Jackson Dart. Obviously, they're gonna have a top pick in this upcoming draft as well, where they can maybe go pick up another wide receiver or maybe another player on on the defensive end as well. Their record is very misleading because they ended what 3-14, but they had a lot of really close games as well. It was unlike a season like the Jets, where they just kind of got destroyed every single game. The Giants played very competitive football, even if it didn't always result in wins. And so I feel like Harbaugh coming into that system with some of these younger pieces is going to be really interesting, and I am excited for that hiring. I'm kind of surprised the Ravens let him go, though. I feel like it was a bit of a fluke season for Baltimore, all things considered, with Lamar being hurt and that missed field goal to end the season for them. But just kind of is what it is. And I guess Baltimore both decided that it was time to move on.
Yeah, I think it was good for a change of scenery because if you think about it, they haven't really made it anywhere in the playoffs. And Lamar, I'm not saying this year, but the past few years, he's been looking great. But they haven't been able to really do anything. So I think it was a good fire, but might not have been on Harbaugh's part.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Baltimore responds and who they want to try to hire because there's that's I feel like a pretty good opening as well. You get to coach Lamar Jackson and Kyle Hamilton and Derrick Henry. So yeah, I'm curious about that. Out of all the jobs that are open right now, I'm gonna name them off to you right now, Xavier. Pittsburgh, Miami, Baltimore, Arizona, Las Vegas, Cleveland, Tennessee, Atlanta. Which team would you want to most be the head coach of, and which team would you want to be least the head coach of?
I would say I would want to be the head coach of Baltimore right now, just because of all the potential they have to do so much damage. And Lamar, he's great. They got Derrick Henry, Kyle Hamilton, like you said. They've got great young players like Malachi Starks, and I would be excited to be the head coach of this team of the Ravens. But the least excited I would be to be the head coach of would honestly, I mean, all the organizations that fired their coach, they got young teams, and they've got a lot of potential. But the team that might have might I don't like the most is Cleveland. Even though they have a great defense, they don't really have a great quarterback. Like unlike Cam Ward, I think he's better, or like even like Michael Penix. But yeah,
Interesting. I think I would not be too upset to get the Cleveland job because obviously they have a lot of money stored up in the quarterback room and it's a bit of a mess in that department specifically, but the rest of the team is looking good. And so if you want to draft another quarterback, get one in free agency, maybe try to find some way to fill in that position specifically, that seems to probably solve a lot of your problems because the defense was one of the best in the league. It's not my most preferred option though. I think my most preferred option actually might be Atlanta. Just think about all the players that they have in that system right now. Bijan Robinson, potentially one of the best offensive players in the entire league. I think he led the league in scrimmage yards this year. Drake London, Kyle Pitts is suddenly starting to break out. Tyler Algier. So that offense is really explosive. You have Kirk Cousins or Penix for another year or so, and maybe you try to look for another quarterback in that room too. But just thinking about all the talented players, I feel like I would maybe want to go over to Atlanta. where I wouldn't want to go is Miami right now because they have so much money kind of strapped up into Tua for all these years into Tyreek Hill, and I feel like that could be a bit of a mess.
I agree, and especially in Miami, like you said, they've got a ton of money stored up, and Quinn Ewers potentially would be their starting basketball and starting head coach, and I mean, yeah, it's a really rough time there because they haven't been able to do anything in the past few years since their wild card in like 3 years ago. So I mean, it would be a tough job.
We were talking before the show, and you had a very interesting perspective about the Eagles' offensive coordinator position that was just opened up. Who do you think should fill that role? And I want you to explain why.
Okay, so Kevin Patillo firing, I think all Eagles fans would be happy of that, and they should be, because I mean, Saquon up the middle, deep ball Andrew Brown just doesn't really slide in this league. But I think an underrated take, even though people might hate on Mike McDaniel. Daniel, I mean, you have to be somewhat good to get a head coaching job. And when this Miami offense was healthy, he commanded the team to playoffs. So I mean, I think Mike McDaniel could do well with his Eagles team, even though he's gotten a lot of hate and hasn't really done much in the past few years. But I think he would be a fool not to take the job because I mean they've got weapons and they've had winning history. I mean, I think he'd be a good fit.
I think you could talk about the culture and with McDaniel and maybe like the warm weather and how they can't play in the cold, but that guy knows how to run an offense, and so trying to fix a maybe a little bit of a broken offense, as you might say, that could be a fun choice for the Eagles. I would if I was Mike McDaniel. I would go to Detroit and fill in that offensive coordinator position for them. Dan Campbell was calling plays for them at the end of the year, and he's crazy. Mike McDaniel's also a little bit crazy. I feel like Jared Goff and Tua are similar enough players in that they're both generally pocket passers, but Jared Goff is just maybe a little bit of a better version of that. And they have so many great offensive weapons, and Amon Ra and Dave Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs and Jamison Williams. Like I feel like there'd be a lot of really fun tools for with all the trick plays and stuff for McDaniel to come in and kind of be like a different version of what Ben Johnson was for them.
Yeah, that's a great job for him too. I mean, we've got a lot of good openings, and excited to see where coaches go.
All right. Well, with that said, we'll keep you posted on how the rest of the coaching positions end up forming. But let's talk about our predictions for the divisional round. And after that, we'll do a quick Super Bowl prediction as well. Let's start off with the Bills and the Broncos in the AFC. Buffalo going into Denver. The Broncos, a bit of an unproven playoff team. Remember, they were the 7th seed last year, and they did not make it past the wild card round. Now they're already in there. And this is a rematch of that first game. The Bills beat them last year, Xavier. Do you think they're going to win again?
The Bills even last year. I'm saying they do it again. Why not? I mean, they've got Josh Allen, playoff monster, and James Cook. I think he could have a great game. But this Broncos team has really looked scary. I have to say, even though all these like hate comments, they don't got a receiver, they don't got a good enough running back. I mean, they've been winning games, so what can you say? But I think I've just got the Bills in this one because I think Josh Allen is really going to prove why he put this team in the playoffs in the position they are right now. And I'm calling an upset, and I think it's going to be Bills 27, and Denver 24.
I'm gonna say that Buffalo wins as well. I might be close. I'll say 21-17, similar to the score in Jacksonville. Um, but we have a recent track record. Denver played Jacksonville in Mile High just a few weeks ago, and the Jaguars blew them out 34-20. And their defense was definitely a big calling card, and Buffalo was didn't have really any problem with that. Josh Allen was still able to deliver, and we're a little bit worried about the receiving room, but their tight end room is one of the best in the NFL with Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, even Jackson Hawes coming through here for the Bills, and so I think that combined with already a new Denver team, I'm gonna have the Bills moving on to the AFC Championship game here. Let's go over to the next Saturday game though. The 49ers up against the Seahawks. I'm going to just say it right now. I think the Seahawks are going to win just because the 49ers continue to be very, very injured and add another big injury with George Kittle going down with that big ACL injury or Achilles tear.
I agree with you. Even though Shanahan's mastermind and all the coaching has been great there, and Brock Purdy been playing good, I just think this is the point where their injuries finally get to them. Even I think this is a I think they should still be proud to be at this point. But I mean, they're playing at Lumen, and Seattle's been looking great, and they already beat them in Santa Clara. So I'm gonna say the Seahawks win this one, 21-13.
Yeah, no Fred Warner. He's not. He had his practice window open, but he's not going to be playing here for San Francisco. And last time they played the Seahawks at home, not even on the road, they lost 13-3, only scoring 3 total points.
Uh
And
huh.
that Seattle defense is just so good. So I have a feeling that they're going to win as well. I'll say that they win the game. I say Seattle wins maybe 27 to 13. Let's go to the Sunday games now. Texans, Patriots. This should be a big battle of the defenses. Do you think that I know you're hyping up Houston. Do you think that they have what it takes to make it to the AFC Championship game?
Yes, and I think this is the best game of the league. I'm just gonna call it, but I mean, defense versus offense is gonna be a very good matchup, I think. And I think the Texans are just gonna play as good enough as they need to play, and I'm gonna say that they win this one, 24-17.
I'll say Houston wins as well, 27-20. I think a lot of the same reasons that we already talked about. And our last game of the day on NBC on Sunday night, Los Angeles Rams against the Chicago Bears. I feel like this is going to be a really fun game as well. High-powered offenses. Who you got?
I think this is gonna be an amazing matchup too, and I think Caleb will have um will play good enough to stay in this game. But I think that the Rams are gonna have this one. I think Stafford and Puka, like you said in the beginning, they've been playing really well, and I think this Rams D line will get to Caleb finally and force some bad throws. I'm gonna say the Rams win this one, 27-21.
I'm gonna say the Bears. They're gonna keep finding ways to do it. I'll have them beating Los Angeles in I would say a bit of an upset in Soldier Field, 24 to 24 to 23. Let's have it be a 1 point game because that's always what the Bears do. And real quick, who's your Super Bowl prediction?
Um, I said this from the start, and I'm gonna say Texans Rams, and I think these two 5 seeds have been looking really good all season long, and I think they've got the best offense in the league compared to the best defense in the league, and I think the Rams will win it, and I mean they're just looking way too good, but I definitely won't be surprised, like you said, if the Bears win. So
I'll take Buffalo beating Chicago in the Super Bowl. Josh Allen ending up on top at the end of it. All right. That's going to do it here for the How Huddle. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Xavier, what do you have to say before we wrap up?
peace.
Peace out, everybody. See you next time.